Oh, day one is all about money. And let me tell you, this is a great day. And we have Chelsea Williams with us now, and she is the money whisperer. I love that. I tell you what, I know what, regardless of what level you are at and what I've experienced in my life in the growth in business, is that the next time I hit a bigger level, well, there's other things to uncover and discover. And it's not a one-time fix it and forget it. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chelsea, but you can let us know. But I tell you, the money mindset, the concepts around it, everything that she's sharing, stay tuned, buckle up, be ready to take lots of notes, because this is good stuff. So Chelsea, I'm so glad that you're here with us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, and I love what you said. It's like there's always that next glass ceiling, right? And, one of the things I talk about is, what is a lot of money to you? Because that's incredibly subjective. Just starting out, maybe it's a goal of 100,000 and you're like, oh man, that's a lot of money to me, right? But then you get there and you're like, okay, that's not a lot anymore. What's the next thing? And it's kind of like that, what got you here won't get you there. And that absolutely applies to the money. Yes.
Well, I am so excited. I've got my pen and paper, so I hope everybody else does too, but I'm going to be taking notes as well.
Good. So what I really want to talk about today is not only just money, but what I've come to understand in my 15 plus years of experience is that money is a mirror. It is always and never about the money. And once we start to create this relationship with our money, we start to see patterns in our money that really reflect in almost every other area in our life. And so what I want to do for you guys at this event today is create some perspective around women and money and some of the different obstacles that we as women face. And I want everybody to leave with a better understanding of what it means to be a woman and manage our money. I want you to feel empowered and also know that there's nothing wrong with you, because I think that money leaves us feeling like that a lot of the times, not understanding it, not knowing how to use it as a tool and apply it, in our life and business, because there are in fact forces that are working against us as women. And I want everybody here to be aware of what those forces are, because when you can do that, you can now take back your power to create a different money story for your life and for your business. So my story with money is not one of those stories that we typically hear where like I have this really sad struggle that I went through and I just came out on the other side stronger and better, and now I'm teaching people how to do the same thing. My story is that I have never struggled with money, ever. Even before I educated myself on how to really leverage it. Now, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean that I had a lot of it. It means that I took what I had and I made it work. And I found happiness and abundance within my means. I fell in love, in absolute love, with numbers almost overnight. It happened in my first accounting class when I went to college. So I'm also one of the student debt, right? So student debt is absolutely a part of my money story. And it's kind of funny. The one class that gave me the tools that I needed to start my businesses in doing accounting firms, it was one class, Accounting 101, and it's now offered online for like $80. And so here's this, $70,000 degree that I have, and now it's available for $80 online. I was also a single mother during my journey, right? So I have a daughter. I had her when I was 20 years old, and that's when I decided to get my life together and go back to college. And through my college career, it was me and my daughter, and I got no financial support from her dad. So the responsibility of the money was all on me, but we made it work. And some of that was through student loans, but it was managed in a way that we could stretch it and make it work for us. And still, I was able to raise my daughter in an environment where she didn't feel that money was scarce in her life, right? And so besides the student debt, I was able to get through college and get into my career without any other debt. And looking back, I think one of the biggest contributors as to why I was able to not live off of debt came from my first money lesson, which was a city bus driver. When I was a sophomore in high school, me and my best friend were on our way to the mall. We took the city bus and we were going to, spend our allowance at Claire's and get Jinko jeans. I'm dating myself, but
Oh my goodness.
Right. So
Yep.
it was this innocent afternoon doing what high school girls do, right? We were coming back from the mall and we sat right behind the city bus driver. And on our way back, he turned around to us and he started yelling. He's like, "Girls, hey, girls." And we're like, "Oh, what's up?" And he was like, "I want you to take out a pad of paper and a pen. I want to explain something to you." And so we took our papers and our pens out, and he started to explain to us that I need you to know how to live on your own when it comes to your money. And he said, "This is minimum wage. This is when taxes come out. These are the going rates for things like rent and internet and gas and all the considerations that you need to."
What?
Crazy, right? Yes, crazy. So it was this moment that at the time I was like, okay, that's weird. I don't know. But then getting into all this money stuff, I started looking back on that and I'm like, that was the only money lesson I ever received. So schools are not educating us, which contributes to why we carry a lot of guilt and shame around our money. We're not taught, but as an adult, it is as important as oxygen. Everything, no matter what your plan is in business or in life, it requires money. Nothing great was ever done without money either. Right? So when I graduated college and I discovered accounting and I fell in love with numbers because we just jived. It was like I spoke the language naturally. I worked in-house for a small business here in town whose CPA dropped the ball. And so with no experience whatsoever, I came to him and I was like, "Hey, I see this isn't working out for you. Would you give me a shot? Just let me try." Right? And he did. And I nailed it. I did. I built everything from the ground up. I sought mentors. One of them was a local tax professional so that he could check my work. And I got to this place to where I was visiting this local tax professional and he was reviewing my numbers and he goes, "Chelsea, I don't know why you come to me anymore. Your stuff, you know what you're doing. In fact, do you want to work here?" And I was like, "Yeah, yes, I do." Like at this point, I knew that numbers were my calling. Right. And so I spent about 4 years at a tax and accounting firm here in town. And I learned so much about that specific industry. And I also identified a lot of gaps in the industry, a lot of the common struggles between bookkeepers and accountants and business owners. And at the end of that 4 years, I decided I wanted to go out on my own. I had made vice president. We were partners for about 2.5 of those 4 years. And we came to an impasse and decided it was time for us to go our separate ways. And so I launched Core Solutions Group, which is my online accounting firm. And it was 100% remote. That was one of the things that was really important to me, was creating this remote environment, right? And so that business has been around for almost 8 years now. And so the next level of my understanding around money came when I started to combine my passions and my interests personally with this thing called money and numbers and the language of money. Warren Buffett said that accounting is the language of money. And a lot of us struggle with money simply because we don't speak the language. And I have a personal interest for neurobiology and how our brains work and how we make decisions and how we form connections and how we change connections. These are all like podcasts I would listen to on my own just because it was so fascinating to me, right? And habits and all these really cool things. And at some point, I started connecting the dots of like, okay, here's what I'm seeing and hearing in working with people and their money. And here's what I'm beginning to understand about human nature and how we form beliefs and how those create habits and how it shows up in our money. And that's how I came to call myself the money whisperer, was having the understanding of all the technical pieces of money, but then connecting the dots of what it means to be human and how that shows up in our money and how we can learn from it. And I have a particular passion around women and money because, like I said, the truth is we have a lot of forces working against us. There is a very clear gap in how women have access to and manage their money. And so some of the reason of that is because of our history with money, right? And what does history show us, no matter what we're looking at? History shows us that just because laws change, people don't like change. And so it takes a long time from the time that we are legally able to do something to the time that the world embraces it around us, right? And so the biggest turning point for us as women came in 1974 with the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Because up until that point, if you look at the timeline of money and today versus when the Equal Credit Opportunity Act was established, women have only been able to control their money for 1% of the life of money. We are only 1% into this thing called us being able to have our own bank accounts, us being able to get our own loans and credit cards and do all of these things without men, right? And the interesting thing is that prior to 1974, women had no rights when it came to earning and managing their own money. However, we were legally obligated to it. If our husband passed away and had debt, we were now responsible for that debt, right? And so let's fast forward to the present because it takes time, right? Just because a law passes doesn't mean that it's going to just like that, right? So let's look at present day and how it is still happening in the finance world. Women earn 16% less than men. And that gap widens when we're talking about women of color, right? Women are less knowledgeable about investing. They are less likely to answer questions on financial literacy. We are still battling some of the mindsets that we are left with, that our mothers and our grandmothers instilled into us as kids, right? And that's why change takes a long time. The mindset changes, and what's taught to us is from a previous mindset, and we have to become aware and change what we're teaching down the road, right? And so mindset around our value, what we are worth in numbers, right? Assertiveness. Women are less likely to negotiate. Women are less likely to ask for more or ask for raises without first being offered, right? Speaking to Black culture in particular, Black culture shows that there is a mistrust of banks. And so that demographic has substantially less engagement with banks and lenders because back in the day, they were burnt down in the time of severe oppression, right? And so the banking algorithms still, because it takes time to change those, is geared towards white men who own property. And those algorithms are playing into what is working against us, right? Women pay 18% more in bank fees over men. Bank fees, overdraft fees, monthly statement fees, transfer fees, all of the fees, right? Look at when COVID hit and our support was the PPP loans. Women statistically received less than men. And so we have this residual historical algorithm that is working against us, and it is still showing up today. We are not there. There is still work to be done. So then what can we do about it? And the good news is we can absolutely do something about it, right? And this is the first step, becoming aware of what it is that is working against us. educate yourself, get educated. Research from the Federal Reserve has shown that when women are educated on things like credit and bank fees and loan capital acquisition, that closes the gap. If we know better, we have been proven to do better, right? Being assertive, asking for what we want, making sure that we're charging what we have all rights to charge, that value mindset, right? Negotiating more. When it comes to credit, knowing things like, if you do a quick Google search on credit, some of the best advice that you can get on improving your credit score is going to be things like paying off your credit cards weekly instead of monthly, so that when it hits, you have a lower balance. That's less credit utilization, right? If you have a credit card or credit cards, increase your credit availability as often as you can. Reach out and ask them to increase it. Now, that does not mean use it and go into debt. It means show them that you have self-control, that just because you have access to it, your financial algorithms show that doesn't mean you're going to go use it, right? And for those of us that are mothers, setting our daughters and sons, of course, up for financial success, adding your kids as authorized users on your credit cards. My 5-year-old and my 15-year-old both have credit cards in their name because it is building credit history for them, right? And you know, a lot of people's goals are that generational wealth, right? So setting our kids up for this is something that we can do. And generational wealth is only maintained when we pass down the beliefs and the habits. Generational wealth can be squandered like that. And listening to, there are quite a few podcasts out there that are specific to women in finance. So get educated. And then we can start to pass that knowledge down to our younger generations and continue to change the story, right? Also, take a look at your money habits. I do this cool thing when people come to me for personal financial strategy, and we go back at least 6 months and we crunch their numbers and we look at, where are you spending your money? Right? And immediately when you look at your money and where it's going, you're like, yeah, I have the habit of getting stressed out and turning to shopping therapy. Right? I have a habit of subscribing to all these cool apps that I think I'll use, and then I never use them and I never cancel them. Right? Or I have this habit of lending people money and never getting paid back. Right? So you can see in your money habits, in your money, in your numbers, what some of those habits are. And this is where money acts like a mirror, right? Because then we have to look at ourselves and take our power back and say, what am I going to do about it? And those come in the form of financial boundaries. And the coolest thing happens when you create defined financial boundaries and you force yourself to stick with them. That's where the magic happens. That's where we run into limiting beliefs or habits that we need to change and things that we need to start doing differently, and reflecting on, why am I struggling with this? Why am I struggling because I can't go to dinner 3 times a week instead of, 5? It makes me feel a certain type of way. I don't feel good enough, right? I'm lacking. There's this scarcity mindset, right? And that's where the magic happens, is reflecting on those and really putting it into perspective. And as women, leaning into our strengths. There are a lot of studies out there that have looked at what women are really good at in the corporate world, in the finance world. One of them was a study done by, I believe it was Ellevest, and there are a few studies on this, but women are better investors in the long run than men. Men are more likely to take risks, but women are better investors. Why? Because we do our research first, we make a strategic investment, and we have the patience to wait it out. Right? So we are better investors. tracking our money. We already manage, right? That's the stereotype for women. We manage the house, we manage the kids, we manage the job, we do all these things, right? Track your money. Use those skills to actually look at it. Because I think that's one of the things that I hear the most is that it's that first step, because you can't measure what you can't see, right? So track your money, look at your money. There's also a study done on the effectiveness of female leaders in the corporate world. And we do better when it comes to managing people because of our innate compassion and understanding that we have that leads to profitable, like it's in the numbers, right? Businesses who have women in leadership roles are more profitable, right? So when we lean into our strengths, when we educate ourselves, when we are willing to look in the money mirror, face the numbers, and then make sense of them, and then take action to create the change that we want, we can come together and we can absolutely write a new money story for ourselves.
There are so many little nuggets and staggering statistics that you shared. Like I have multiple pages of notes. I love all of the information that you shared. And I think, so let me just go, I'm just going to go back to all my notes and we'll start from there. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay. Your accounting 101. So it's $80. If someone's like to like, you know what? Yes, I'm ready to do this. I want to learn. Where do they even get information for that?
For accounting in
Because you
particular,
said like, was there a certain course that you said that was $80? Is there like
yes.
something specific to send them to?
Yeah. And there's probably a lot out there. Accounting 101, I know Udemy has one. There's probably even more options now. And what you'll learn in a course like that is not real world applicable, but it will give you the book smart of what you need to know and understand, because we have the book smart and then we have like the street smart side of things, right? Which fills in all of the gaps.
And don't you, I mean, I know for me in my journey, because 12 years ago, I had no knowledge of numbers. I didn't even know where, who our insurance company was and how much something cost. I didn't know. I mean, I was not in control of any of that. And so I felt very late to the game of understanding anything. So I felt like I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't going to, who am I to do this? I can't do this. I had all kinds of stories around it. Right. But what I love about this, like accounting 101, is it's giving you the terms, the terminology, the understanding to help someone like stand a little taller. Like, okay, I'm not a fraud, which is something that I had felt at one point, right? Like, so now we're not a fraud. Like, I'm understanding this stuff. Let me dive into it even more, which I just think would really help with confidence and taking the action that's needed to manage our money, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's like talking to a lawyer, right? It's lawyers use big fancy words and you're like,
yep.
Right. But there are just understanding the terms when it comes to money. It will make it process so much smoother in your brain and allow you to hold on to that confidence.
Yeah. I love that, because I mean, I have friends that are lawyers and I love how I hear them speak to people, because they speak at the level, right? I've never felt talked down to, but they know, they come in and have a, very quickly have an understanding of where you're at, and they will make sure it's understandable. Because again, even in lawyers, right? It's the stuff, it's not rocket science, right? The words are big, but some of the concepts themselves, I'm like, when it's explained to me in a way I understand, I'm like, oh, well, totally makes sense. I get it. Right. So I think with the accounting and like what you're saying, what they're learning, the book stuff, it's just helping. You now have the elevated language. For me, it was, I have the language now, know that I can walk in this room, that I belong in that room. Again, we all belong there, but it's all the feelings around it and our mindset around it. But you get that information, the knowledge, okay, yeah, let's go. I'm going to walk in this room and learn more.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a very easy mental bottleneck to disengage.
Yeah. Yeah. There have been several podcasts that I've really enjoyed that have helped from a financial standpoint. I know you mentioned, podcasts as well. Do you have any that are your favorites, or someone listening, they're like, oh, here's a couple that you'd really recommend, regardless whether they're starting, at ground zero, if you're like they're in baby steps of it, or have more knowledge in the finance world. What would you recommend?
Yeah. So my favorite one is the Financial Feminist.
Okay.
She may not be everybody's cup of tea, but she has a lot of tude and she just tells it like it is. And she shares so much knowledge on everything that I've kind of covered today.
Yeah.
And just to plug my own, we're getting ready to drop a podcast called,
Oh, exciting. What's it called?
it's called Always and Never About the Money.
Oh, I love it. Have you recorded any yet?
We have, yeah, we're getting ready to batch drop in the next couple weeks. So we are like right there on the edge.
That's super exciting.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah,
Thank
those are a
you.
labor of love, and it's fun that you're about ready to launch. So yeah, be sure to let me know when that actually happens.
Yes.
Love to follow and support you and
Well,
learn. I mean, I'm all about the learning.
yeah, absolutely.
So one thing you were talking about that, like, you were going through college, you decided to go back to college, you were a single mom. What kind of challenges did you have, or what did you feel were the biggest struggles? Because I feel like there's something there to just kind of provide hope to anybody, right? Like, you didn't have an easy path, right? I mean, yes, you're like you're saying, like, I didn't have this whole, woe is me story, but you know what? Yeah, raising a child and going through college, that's not walking through roses. I mean, they're day-to-day stuff. Imagine there were struggles. So share a little bit more about that, just because I think it's so often, even, for me to look at someone 10 steps ahead. Oh, yeah, gosh. Well, they know it. They've got it, like, without realizing it. There's all kinds of talk I get to rework and rewire too, always, because it's easy to kind of think, well, yeah, but I mean, well, yeah, look at Chelsea. Of course she can figure this out, right? But you weren't always there. You learned at step one, just like everybody else. I mean, share a little bit more about that if you're open to it.
Absolutely. Time, money is actually an exchange of time. The reason why we want more money is so that we can have more time to create experiences.
Mhm.
Right. And I would say the biggest struggle, because I was a full-time student, I had 2 jobs. I was in a situation where my family was not happy with who I had a baby by. So they were not very supportive in helping me in many ways. And so I had to find ways and people to make sure that my daughter was taken care of while I did all of these things. So my biggest struggle was that I sacrificed time with my daughter to get through all of these things. And there's a lot of shame that comes around that, and a lot of guilt. Being a mother and sacrificing time with your family to obtain money can be a huge weight on your shoulders and stick with you, right? And so what I did to kind of push through that phase in our life was remind myself that 5 years from now is when it's going to pay off. She's going to see, she's always going to remember, if I did it, she can too. There's
Mhm.
nothing that you can't get through if you have the drive and understanding to do it. And it's kind of a catch-22, right? Because our money beliefs come from our imprint period, ages 0 to 7 for the most part. And what we see our parents and our family around us doing to get money is what we believe we must do. And I absolutely grew up in a household where you sacrificed time for money, you busted your butt for it. And it was not to live a glorious life. Like, we still got some things that we wanted, but I would still see other kids doing things and be like, oh, we don't do that. Right. So that's what I was taught. And I appreciate that hustle to a certain extent, but everything in moderation, and know your options. And especially in today's day and age, there are so many ways to make money. We don't have to believe that anymore.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I've even noticed that in conversation with my youngest. He's 17 and he has gone out and bought this big fancy truck, something, and in my mind, I'm like, that's not a good choice. How are you? And I realized, I'm like, oh my goodness, how quickly we can put, fierce. I'm like, you're 17, kind of follow the steps. But I'm finally like, back off. I'm like, boy, I love it. I love that you have the confidence to know that you're going to make every truck payment for that. I love that. I mean, he's like, of course I'm going to be a millionaire and I'm going to be when I'm 25. I'm not going to work the rest of my life. I'm like,
Oh my
okay,
God, I love that.
yes, yes. So awesome. And I'm like, okay, that is so cool. And yet, it's like everything you're like, okay, make sure that I'm not saying something that could compete with it. Right. Cause you don't want to diminish that. Own
Yeah,
it, go for it.
yes, like having kids now, we have to be so careful the limiting beliefs that we place around our kids and
Mhm.
money, right? Like I have to be careful. My daughter likes fancy shoes and she'll tell me, "Yeah, but these shoes are $200." And in my mind, I'm like, "Ugh." But I won't, to her, I'm gonna be like, "Okay, baby, how are you gonna get that? Like, I'll give you this amount, this much towards it. I'll
Yes.
meet you. How are we gonna get the rest?"
Yeah.
Right. And, she is really good at art. She has been a drawer since she could pick up a pencil, and now she is being commissioned to create artwork for like our friend's son's room. But she's
Yeah.
dipping her toes into the idea that I can make money in this way doing something that I love, because that's the
Yeah.
world we live in.
Yes. Yeah. That is so good. That's awesome. I'm glad that she's doing that. And you're right. I mean, there's opportunities. They're endless and we can generate it and we get to believe that we can generate because there, like you said, there's unlimited amount of ways, possibilities, and you don't have to leave your house. Like you don't have to be an extrovert. Like you don't even have to like people. You can be
Yes.
generating all the wealth that you desire and want. Our limiting beliefs are on those mirrors. So I've really enjoyed this conversation. The one thing that you said at the very beginning that I love is that when you were, regardless of where you're at, right? You might not have had everything that you wanted financially, but I think this is the piece, and I want to make sure nobody misses out on this, is that you had said that regardless, I think it was regardless of your circumstances with finances, is that you found the happiness and abundance in what you had. I mean, I think repeat that for everybody in the back because it is so, we can go on this chasing for the happiness, chasing for the joy. We don't find the happiness and joy inside of us. It doesn't matter how many dollars we have. We're still going to be wondering, like, now we're $10 million and bringing it in a year. Why are we still not fulfilled? And so I think that's just a very powerful message.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, how many real world examples do we have of people who have a ton of money and choose to end their lives? Like you would look at them and think, oh, they have everything. Right. And again, that comes from a place of scarcity. That comes from a place that leads us to believe that, oh, once I get that amount of money in my life, then I can be happy. Right. Then I can do these things and then I can be happy. Like I definitely want people to take from this today that don't let money stall your happiness because, like I said,
Mhm.
money is really just an exchange for time. Time is the biggest asset. And that's an accounting language, right? Go learn what an asset is. Time is the biggest asset that we have in our lives. And when people talk about wanting to make more money, what they're really saying is, I want to go do these things with my time and with these people.
Mhm.
And I think like the it used to be 60,000, but people are most happy and fulfilled at, I think the new number is 80,000, $80,000 a year. The happiest people are not making a ton of money. They're making enough to not have to worry about surviving and having enough to use their time with the people that they love and create experiences. There
Yes.
are so many things that we can do for free and genuinely enjoy it. So don't let money be what stops you from finding your happy.
Oh, totally. We've had these conversations with my boys because my youngest, who, is going to be multimillionaire when he's in his 20s, and my oldest, who just wants to bake and enjoy and have life. And he doesn't like, money is not his priority. Like, I mean, he's just like, I want to do what I love. I want to be around people that want to work hard. He has no patience for people that slack, right? These things. But he's like, my youngest is like, oh, man, you're not going to make any money doing that. And I'm like, honey, like, it's not about what you make. It's about how you spend it, and whether it's Dave Ramsey or anyone, right? It's any financial person, anything in the accounting world and generating money. It's like, it's not about how much you make, it's how you spend it, right? Making sure you're living below your means. And I'm like, the amount of things that my oldest craves, wants, desires. I mean, I finally bought him a few new shirts. I'm like, do you need anything else? He's like, no. He's like, these still fit me. Why would I buy anything else? I'm like, well, I think they're like 7 years old. You sure you don't want like just a new shirt for, like the material things are not his thing. Well, you know how much money that's going to save him? Or my youngest, who, like your daughter, wants the $200, $500, $800 pairs of shoes. That to me, I'm like, what a joke. But it's because I don't value it, right? We all value different things. Make sure what you're earning fits with what you value, right? I mean, my youngest actually told me he would have rather stayed home from our 2-week trip overseas last summer. And I just handed him cash because he wanted to, do some upgrades to his truck. And I'm like, I appreciate that that's what you want to do with your money. This was my money, and I wanted experiences for all of us as a family. So I went to Greece and Italy and Turkey, and he's like, I mean, it was fine, but I would have just really stayed home. I'm like, oh.
Yes.
But again, right? We value it differently, and that's okay. Values and differences are what makes the world go round, but just do it within our means.
Yes, yes. And always check your intention, right? Like, why do you want this new best thing, right? Who are you comparing yourself to? Are you comparing yourself to somebody? All of the high-end brands that we perceive as wealthy people having and representing, they actually market specifically to middle-class America, because middle-class America wants to be here. And they think that by portraying that image of these brands, it makes them feel like they are a part of this, but really they can't numerically afford that. And so check your intentions. Like, why do you want these? And I'm not saying wanting material things is wrong at all.
Right.
But if you are in a position where the math just isn't there yet, that's a great time to reflect on your intentions.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Well, and you hear all the time, the wealthiest people are driving Toyotas and Hondas. They're not
Yeah.
driving the $500,000 cars that, some people are attracted to. My youngest would be one of them. He's like, yeah, we're going to great. And I tell him like, awesome. He wanted a McLaren PS when he was 16. I'm like, that's amazing. So I told you I'd put $5,000 towards a car. How are you going to get the other for many hundreds of thousands of dollars? What do you mean? I'm like, yeah, we're going to work on that. Right. It's okay. It's okay to want those things, and make sure you're purchasing them when it makes sense, if that is what you like. Yeah.
Delayed gratification. And that is what creates generational wealth. I hear people say so
Ooh,
often,
yes.
I can't save. I don't make enough to save. I don't have enough to save. Saving is a habit. I don't care if it is 50 cents, it is 50 cents saved. The reason why banks make so much money on people is because we do not exercise delayed gratification. Delayed gratification in your money is a game changer.
Yes. I think I'm just going to have my 16-year-old, and we're going to come on together. Well, now 17, let him hear it from someone else.
There you go.
Hearing it from mom is so boring.
Oh, you're right. You are so right.
Oh, delayed gratification. Isn't that true? And, I think as time has gone on, the generations, it's made it tougher, right? All of our social media, everything. I mean, I've found myself, attention span in general is dropping, but I find that mine has really dropped too, right? Like the focus, quick move, keep going on the next thing. It's not doing us any favors as far as that. I really love just the mindset around the money. I love that you shared about all the historical stuff about the women and the differentiations and the time, and how, from the 70s, and here's what we're still struggling with. I mean, these are things that we might have struggled with. And now, because we know better, we know the gaps, we get to make different changes. We get to empower ourselves to be in a greater position. I mean, some of the things that, I've discovered as I've been going on, like, I think one thing that you were saying about, pay attention to the cues and what's happening and what are your thoughts around it. There's powerful conversations you get to have with yourself. And some of them, they're not nice. I'll tell you, I wanted to hide from them. I wanted to turn that mirror and just turn it away and pretend like it wasn't even in the room. Because all of a sudden I'm like, oh, and it's money, but really, like what you're saying, it's the core. There's something else, there's feelings of abandonment, feeling of not worthy enough, feeling of, like for me, one of them was just around, time by myself versus time with other people. And then it's like, oh, I don't mind spending money when it's with my boys, when it's with my friends, let's go. And then I'm like, oh, well, that'd be fun to do. And it's something by myself. I realized my initial knee jerk was like, ooh, well, that's too much. And I'm like,
You go somewhere else besides me.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was a little surprising. I'm like, wow. So I'm not placing enough value and worth on me, but I'll give and share to everybody else because it's an experience. What I get from it is the experience and enjoyment with them. Right. But
Yeah.
I'll pay for them. But I'm not going to do it for myself. I'm like, ooh, we got some discovery to work on. So
Yeah.
this whole conversation, so valuable, so powerful. I have just really enjoyed it. I hope that everybody that watches this can really be able to take away no guilt and shame from it. Right. I mean, what we don't know, we don't know. And believe me, people, I've gone through all the guilt and shame myself. Right. But just break it. It doesn't have to be hard. I think that's another thing I always take away from any of these things, right? Like remove the guilt and shame. Learning new things doesn't have to be hard. Find someone that is a little further along, whether it's a female, whether it's maybe like, okay, yeah, I need to find Chelsea. We need to have a conversation, right? Maybe it's a friend that, is in a similar position, but a little bit further ahead that can share. For me, I've been very fortunate to have a couple strong male friends that could see that, hey, she's amazing. She just needs to learn a little bit and has pulled me along. And honestly, I'm being honest, kind of dragging my feet in a couple areas because it was scary. Like I I didn't know. I don't belong there. Right. And they're like, come on, and now I'm in a space. I'm like, yes, I will walk in those rooms with them. I know I belong. We're looking at, putting together this project, major investment thing with multiple people. I'm the ones that's bringing the people together. I'm like, what?
Connector. How about that?
Right?
Feminine strength. Yes.
Yeah. So it's like I think just keep going, right? Keep taking the steps, even if you don't know where it's leading you. There's always goodness by continuing to try, continue to learn, continue to grow.
Yes. Yeah. And you said it, finding a mentor, whatever works for you. Because besides the education, it's the accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this is not to say, like you said, even if it's a man, this is not about women versus men. This is about finding our place, stepping into it, because men are the yin to our yang. Both are required, both are as valuable. Right. And I think that when we're looking at something like this, money is a simple place to start because it is simple math. It's very easy, right? It's sticking to it. It's the accountability of your money where we get to engage in this journey of self-discovery and reflection and self-growth. It is one of the ways to do it. And there's a very simple formula to start.
I love it. I love it. Chelsea, I really appreciate you joining us. I know people are going to be maybe a little shocked, maybe a little mind blown. And now they get to figure out what the next step is. One step, right? Like you're saying, saving, just save 50 cents, save $50. Doesn't matter the amount. That's what I tell my boys. I'm like, I don't care how much you save. We're just going to start and get in the habit. And so I think a lot of times money can be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be. Let's make it easy. Let's make it simple. Let's figure out that one first step that they're going to take and just keep continuing to grow and shine. I love it. Thank you so much, Chelsea.
Absolutely. This was a pleasure.
I loved it.